Good. Welcome back to another midweek mid-range, and welcome back to basketball. My name is Parker Ainsworth. I am joined again by Jeremy and Jamaal. How y'all doing, guys?
Glad to be here.
Fantastic. How's it going?
It's going okay down here in Texas. As a teacher, I'm very ready for summer vacation.
Oh, baby.
You probably need it more than anybody else down here.
We got a couple more weeks. So I normally use this as a chance to check in on the national game. The national game tonight is listed as a San Antonio at Utah on NBA TV. So shout out to small markets, as some small market guys between, I guess, really a Bulls guy, but in Minnesota, and then we got Denver, and then myself and the Texas teams. I feel somewhat cool about like showcasing a small market. I wish we had an NBA TV game. What basketball game are y'all watching right now? I guess because that's about to start.
I have my sights set on the Blazers game. No, they're playing the Cavs. Suns Hawks is good at halftime, and then I got Knicks fever. I want to watch Knicks Nuggets starting right now.
What about you? I know Knicks Nuggets for you too, Jamaal.
Yeah, I mean it's a marquee game. I mean, who would have thought this late in the season that the Knicks would actually be playing meaningful basketball games this late in the year?
Meaningful basketball games.
We'll pick right back up from 2 weeks ago. Knicks fever is still looming.
Oh yeah.
Well, and to be fair, like 2 weeks is about the whole length of Linsanity. So the fact that it's more than 2 weeks is probably that's a good thing. I got Milwaukee, Washington on. We'll get more into triple double and Russ and those kind of things later. Washington's winning this game. Like I'm a little confused. But I guess if we're gonna start diving into topics, we might as well go into hot tea, cold brew. Hot Tea Cold Brew is brought to you by Yeti's Cups, Coolers, and Koozies. The shop, make sure they're your go-to shop for keeping things hot or cold, just like these NBA stories. Yeti is based out of Austin, Texas. Check out the links on our social media handles for all your insulated tailgating, camping, and daily life needs. Yeti's built for the wild. Again, this idea is built on that a Yeti cup can keep things hot for like 6 to 8 hours or keep things cold for up to 24. So we're going to look at some different stories across the league and see if they're hot or cold. And we've got to start because every show that talks basketball always starts with LeBron James. We got to start with LeBron James and the play-in games. Now, we'll explain more about this in a second, but the question is it hot tea or cold brew, Jamaal, that LeBron James is kind of being a baby about these play-in games?
Yes, it is hot tea. And the fact that he's complaining about it after close to about a year ago that he was literally in favor of having the play-in games because you had teams like Portland, Memphis, all trying to fight for those final 1 or 2 spots or whatever. And he was literally advocating for that. And now how quickly things change after 1 year, the Lakers find themselves in danger of being in that very same play-in because they haven't been playing well the last couple of weeks to months. So now that LeBron James is saying that whoever made this stuff should be fired, I'm like, that's odd timing to me. So I think he needs to bite the bullet on that one.
So, and a quick explanation of things. First of all, the quote Jamal is alluding to is in March of 2020, so about 14 months ago, right after basketball wrapped up because of the COVID pandemic and Rudy Gobert and so on. It wasn't just Rudy, but was first Rudy. And the talk was like, well, if you were to just start the playoffs, right? No one knew when it was going to start back. But if you were to just start the playoffs, how would you let those last teams jostle for it? And he said you got Portland. Like this LeBron James said, you've got Portland, you've got Memphis, you've got New Orleans and Sacramento all tinkering around there. So if there's 5 or 10 games left, why not just let those guys battle it out? Now that he's one of those guys, Jeremy, it sounds like the quote now is whoever came with that S needs to be fired. And I say that mostly because he was kind of one of those people, and I don't think he wants to be fired. Jeremy, what do you think about this hot tea, cold brew?
It's really convenient to complain about it once you're in it. So now they're in it. Same with Luka and the Mavs last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Quit complaining just because you're in it. That's what I put in. I'll plug my quick play-in piece. I had one of my favorite matchups as the Mavericks playing anybody. Because if you complain about the play-in tournament, you should be playing in it.
Well, and so some quick background on this. The play-in tournament is the 7 seed plays the 8 seed in a 1-game runoff. Winner gets the automatic 7 seed in a traditional playoff bracket. The winner of that, the loser plays the team that wins between the 9 seed and the 10 seed. So if you're like a 9 or 10, you got to win 2 games. And if you're a 7 or 8, you just can't lose 2 games. The reason they pick 7, I guess, is the lowest seeded team to win an NBA championship was the 6 seeded Rockets back in 95 on their repeat tour. Worth pointing out that they also added Clyde Drexler in the middle of the season. So like the Rockets in the playoffs were a different team than the Rockets in the regular season if they added Clyde Drexler with 10 weeks to go. And since that's the lowest seed, they figure the 7 through 10 thing is kind of more of a wide open shot. I got to think it's really weird that everyone except for people like that are underachieving and in this are having a problem with this, right? Like Washington, as I watch them beating Milwaukee right now, is loving this. They're currently, going into this game, they were the 10 seed in the East, and you have not heard a peep of complaints out of Washington, D.C., right? Like they're not saying, oh, woe is us, we're going to have to play a couple games again. Like, this is their chance, right? I also am going to ask later, like, this is adding value to, like, Bradley Beal's scoring run and to, like, Russell Westbrook's triple-double run because they aren't out of the playoffs. In a normal year, they're like, yeah, they're doing those cool things, but they're the 10 seed, so who cares, right? It also gives us a chance to potentially watch more Steph Curry. And, I'm a Rockets guy, so he's broke my heart a few times. Watching Steph Curry is fun. like just objectively speaking, that's a fun thing. I think it's interesting. So right now, the 6 through 10 in the West is Dallas, Portland, Golden State, Memphis, San Antonio. The Lakers won a tiebreaker with Dallas, so that could very easily change right above that. And out East, it's Boston, Charlotte, Indy, and Washington. Are we going to hear more complaints about this? I'll start with Jamaal. Do you think we're going to have more complaints about this as we get to it? Are we going to hear stuff after it? Or is this really just loudmouths and Mark Cuban and LeBron James going off for being loudmouths?
I think probably after the season, you might hear more. You might hear more people complain about it because I know through some inner circles in the NBA, thinking, look at the extended season, even though it's compressed 72 games, you're playing a lot of games back to back, and you see all the injuries pile up. That can definitely be a concern that say that, no, we don't want this anymore because last year we had to do it because it was an unprecedented season. But now that you kind of get back to some normalcy because now you have teams playing back in their old arenas. Sorry, Toronto. But it's just a matter of, what does the NBA really want to focus in on their value? Because I think as we've seen throughout most of the season is that when you get to seeds 7 through 10, we have more meaningful games as the season goes on because I know most games in late March, early April, to some of the higher seeds, it won't matter as much unless you're going for that 2 or 1 seed. But now that you have the 7 through 10 seeds now actually going into this playing game, I think you'll have more teams that have more to gain and more to lose. So I think it makes more exciting for the fans.
And you're potentially about to. In the play-in group, you could have Dame Lillard, Steph Curry, and either LeBron James or Luka Doncic on the Western Conference. And on the Eastern Conference, you could have big market Boston, right? You could have Rookie of the Year potential Rookie of the Year LaMelo Ball in Charlotte, and then like this Russell Westbrook Bradley Beal combo at the bottom. Like you could lose like LA, Golden State, Boston as your big markets really fast. And so, Jeremy, I ask you as a guy that's a Bulls fan, bigger market team, now maybe not the same as Boston or LA, right? But living in Minnesota, right? So you see kind of like both sides of the big team, small team kind of thing. Is that a problem? Is that a problem for like people with dollars and cents, or is that a problem for the league, or is that just kind of the way it shakes out this year?
With the play-in, what problem exactly are you?
So, like, we could potentially lose these big market teams? Like, by the end of the first weekend, you could lose Steph, you could lose LeBron, you could lose Boston, like, boom, 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 like, really quickly.
Well, we could have lost them in 4 games of playoff basketball because they probably weren't going to win anyway. I mean, come on. The best part about it is that we're really haggling here over a 7 and an 8 seed. Come on, I mean, what's the complaint here? I did some quick research on Basketball Reference earlier in the week just for fun, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. I should have written them down like you did this week, but I just perused 8 seeds and 7 seeds to even make it past the first round. Of course, you have the We Believe Warriors, and I don't think there's even 5 7 seeds that have advanced in the 2003, like the 2003 to now, full 7-game first round series. There were a few more when there was only 5 games needed. But I mean, come on, guys, what are we haggling about? Just because LeBron got hurt and fell to the 7 seed, he can complain about it now. 7 seeds don't get past the first round. It doesn't happen.
You bring up a good point about the 7-game series because the Knicks in '99 were an 8 seed, as my co-host in my other show, Shaka Cummings, New Yorker, will say. He always brings that back up, but the truth is, with the 5-game series there, and also Ewing getting healthy, right? They got good. That really changed things up in '99. It was a lockout season.
Maybe it would be bad for losing some of these big teams for the NBA, but how many people really care or give any sort of mind that Boston loses and doesn't get to play in the playoffs? I don't think anybody.
And that's the beauty of it, because I know a lot of these large market teams, a good portion of fans don't like them at all. And
don't underachieve all year, and you won't have to play in the play-in. Like
that's a fair point. And so I think now that you have a lot of these other smaller market teams, like say Charlotte, for instance.
Let me watch Charlotte.
Yes, let me watch Charlotte too. I love to see LaMelo Ball play.
So one team that could be upset about this, but we won't know they're upset till later, is whichever it is, Phoenix or Utah. I don't know how that'll shake out. We'll talk more about seeding at the end, or later, I should say, not at the end. One of them could potentially, if the Lakers fall into this, draw the Lakers, right? Because those teams are jockeying for first and second, and the Lakers may fall in this play-in thing. If the Lakers fall in this play-in thing and then get healthy, and then they get a couple games to tune up, and then all of a sudden you're Utah, you fought all year to have this great season that's filled with rah-rah. We finally climbed the mountaintop. In the first round, you get healthy, rested, warmed up LeBron and Anthony Davis. That just doesn't seem like a fair. That doesn't like, and I know that's just the way this season shook out, right? Right? Like that's just how this season shook out. If they'd been around the whole season, they wouldn't be there. And as Jeremy points out, like they probably with injuries would have just been the 7th seed anyway, right? Like it would have just been a matchup that stinks for them. But man, that did like giving them a chance to warm up like that just seems kind of. It seems like if I were a Utah fan and we got that 2nd seed and like I feel like this is Gobert's year, right? We're really making a run here. I actually don't know enough about Donovan Mitchell's health concerns, but he ought to be coming back some, right? That'd be rough. That'd be rough.
I feel more confident in the Jazz beating a downtrodden Lakers team than the Suns. They just have bigger bodies and they just have a better like sort of Spursian 2014 Spursian identity. They can just kind of like, if they're still rolling, the best chance they have is to just eat them alive with ball movement and use Rudy Gobert to clean up some of those rebounds that Anthony Davis was destroying people with in last year's playoffs.
Well, I'll give you a caveat to that. So the Suns and Jazz, or if they're facing the Lakers or whatever, I'm looking at the point guard matchup. Who do you rather take, Mike Conley or Chris Paul? Who do you take?
Right, and so you're getting further down the line, I think, because where Phoenix and Utah are currently slotted. I will say that both of those teams win the point guard matchup against LA, unless you're counting how LeBron as the point guard, right? The point guard matchup they might not win is if somehow Golden State gets a Steph Curry run out of this thing, right? We've seen in Fuego Steph, and he's had a crazy, and we'll talk more about his scoring performances and Steph being Steph later, but like. In this play-in thing especially, he just has to catch Fuego for a weekend. Like, that seems super possible.
And if they get the 7, I can't remember where they're slotted now. Like, just one game? Like, you have to stop. You have to hope he doesn't go supernova Steph for one game? There's pretty low chances of that.
That's the counterpart of this, right? If you're Dallas or LA, you get the 7 seed, you lose to the other one, right? Because either Dame time or LeBron's back or something, right? And then your entire, like, do you make the playoffs is based on can you contain Steph Curry for a game, right? Like I I am not above hard fouls. This is one game, guys. This is one game. Steph Curry's a little guy. Anyway. Well, let's keep it moving. And talking about Steph Curry, we're going to dive into the next hot tea cold brews. Look at the last week because it felt like there were time and time again lots of different people going for 40 plus, right? And so I saw Giannis over the weekend go for 49, and he also is guarding Kevin Durant on the other end. And we'll get more into the specifics of a second, but the hot tea cold brew question is, or hot tea cold brew statement is, Giannis's 49-point night was the most impressive scoring night of the last week. Jeremy, I'll start with you. Did you see anything more impressive over the week? What do you think?
You bet your buttons I did. This is hot tea. And you know why? I kind of lean towards maybe Tatum's 60, but do you know why? For this particular show, Giannis's 49 was most impressive. He unleashed the mid-range all over the net. Even if he didn't make a bunch of them, I watched his just all possessions video. He missed a lot of them, but my God, is he taking them. People are going to have to respect that free throw, elbow extended jump shot. He waited a little bit to unleash it. He's been working on it. I could tell, and it looks good.
In respect to Giannis, I saw that Zion Williamson has taken the most. We think of Giannis as this dunker. I saw that Zion Williamson has taken the most layups in the league, and he's got a 200-shot gulf between him and Giannis. And I think they were using that stat to point out that we think of the Giannis dunks, but the truth is he also takes other shots more so than Zion does, right? Mm-hmm. And so Giannis's night was impressive. Zion actually had another impressive night, but it wasn't from scoring. Jamaal, when you think back to the last week and all the different 40-plus point nights, is Giannis just the one that sticks out? Are there other ones? You're going to go Tatum, like Jeremy mentioned. What do you think?
So in my honest opinion, I think it has to be Giannis because he's doing it in a high-profile game against, as we saw, Kevin Durant and the Nets. Now, don't get me wrong. Tatum's night for scoring 60 against the Spurs and that big comeback, it was a great night. But this is when Boston was struggling. They're still trying to find out exactly who they are, and it just feels like there's something wrong with Boston.
Did you just say that Boston's still trying to find out who they are? There's 5 games left?
But is he wrong?
Who is Boston right now? Who can we honestly say who they are?
They are two guys that can score the basketball and not necessarily cohesive, and they just kind of score sometimes 60.
Sometimes 60.
While also being down by 30 in the same game.
So while also being down by 30 in the same game and going to overtime with the Spurs. So we mentioned Giannis' 49 points on 36 shots. He also guards Durant in that game, which is important, I think, to mention because that's who Giannis is, right? That's why he's 2-time MVP. Durant had 42 points the same game. So I don't know if that helps the Giannis's defense side or what that does. We mentioned Tatum had 60 points in an overtime comeback win. They were down by 30 at one point. 2 days in a row, the Warriors played the New Orleans Pelicans because they did the back-to-back, getting it all done in a short series kind of thing. Over the course of 2 days, Steph Curry had 78 points, 41 one day and 37 the next. Russ Westbrook had the big triple-double game with 24 rebounds and 20 assists that everyone saw, or I think they have that inverse, but everyone's talking about. Earlier in the week, earlier since the last show, he had a 42-point, 10 assists, 9 rebound night. Again, is that worse than a triple-double because he had 1 less rebound? I don't know. We'll talk about it later. You know me. You know I'm going to point out Kevin Porter Jr. had 50 points and 11 assists. 50 points and 11 assists. The youngest guy to have a 50 and 10 night and the 4th youngest to have a 50-point night. And then I was looking this up. I'd kind of forgotten that in the same week, Tim Hardaway Jr. had 42. They were just buckets everywhere. They're they were just. They
say it's never been easier to score points in today's NBA. Either never been easier or everybody is just so good. A little bit of both.
And shout out actually if you want to listen to the Spinsters as a podcast. They did a great podcast breaking down the defensive rule changes around 2000 and tracking how that leads to the 3-point era we're in. But you've got THJ, KPJ, and Steph each got hot from 3. The other half of this list, Tatum did everything. He got 60, right? But
it was impressive. It was an impressive 60.
But the rest of this list kind of has multi-level scoring, right? None of this was like back to the basket, big man. You're too little. None of this was, or none of those. That half the guys were like got hot from three and just couldn't miss. I go to the Giannis game because he is also getting assigned Durant, and again, Durant had 42, so maybe I'm getting too much credit to that. But Giannis is having to do a lot of energy things, and that's a potential Eastern Conference Finals matchup, right? Giannis and the Bucks, the Brooklyn Nets. Like, give how fun those two games were on Saturday and Monday. Like, give me 7 of those. Like, I'll take 7. I want them all overtime. Like, that was a fun series. Which brings me to this question within this topic. While the buckets are fun, it's a team game. Which of those games stuck out to y'all, Jamaal?
Oh, it has to be Bucks next, because as you saw, that could easily be an Eastern Conference preview. And honestly, if I'm the Nets, I'd be very concerned right now, because you've played 2 of these 3 games without James Harden, and you saw how bad your defense was against Giannis. And if that does not get fixed immediately, I think the Bucks could expose them in that series.
Yeah, I feel like the Nets' defensive hopes and this is a guy that loves James Harden, and loved having on my team for 8 years. Bringing him into that team, your defense is your offense. You're just hoping not score him, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, 150 points. Can't beat that.
Is the Bucks Nets the games that stuck out to you as well?
Yeah, it had to be, especially because there was 2 in such close succession. I got more of the Tuesday game. Bucks won both of them, but they were both they're so good. It's just high-level basketball. I love watching high-level basketball. That's the problem with some of these early middle of the winter type regular season games. Obviously, you're not going to go 110% unless you're Russell Westbrook in the middle of January. But that's why the playoffs are so great. Sometimes you see people not closing out. You see people, they miss a steal. They give up an easy layup. That's just not what you see in the playoffs. And that's kind of how these Brooklyn Nets Bucks games felt. It's just, I'm ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, and I will bring up another good point is that with those 2 losses, Milwaukee now owns the tiebreaker against Brooklyn. So now Brooklyn lost both to Milwaukee and Philadelphia.
Philly was earlier. I feel like we must have been on, Jamaal, because I remember talking about the Philly one as well. They're a game ahead right now in the standings still, but any tie, you're right. Any tie could drop them to 3rd real quick. Which will matter, I think, because they're still kind of trying to figure out who they are. Moving on to the next topic. This is when I saw on the Twitter sphere, hashtag NBA Twitter today. And I hadn't really thought about it, so I started looking at the numbers like, oh, they might need to do that. Hot tea, cold brew, Jeremy. The Blazers should fire Terry Stotts.
Ooh.
Again, I'm going hot tea. I like to do hot tea. Not too much of this stuff is cold brew to me. I'm going to say hot tea, and here's why. I don't fancy myself a savant in identifying good and bad coaching. I'm just not going to pretend to be that guy. But it's gone a little stale. They've got these 2 superstars, and I do remember one particular team that fired a coach of the year just because things were getting a little bit stale and it wasn't really working out. And they may have gotten Kawhi Leonard too, but we don't want to. Let's not think about that too much. Sometimes you just gotta move on. Terry Stotts can get another job. I think you just need a fresh mind, even with the Timberwolves. Ryan Saunders was just a bad coach. Terry Stotts isn't a bad coach, but you got to get a new voice in the room, because I can't say that I read the Chris Haynes article, but just from the reaction it got, it's that they're just downtrodden, the Blazers. They just look beaten. Yeah. They feel tired and beaten. They need something different.
Yeah, so before I hand Jamaal the quick rundown on Stotts' time with the Blazers, he's been there. This is his 9th season. He's had 3 different 50-win seasons, 2 more that were over 500. So he's a little bit more than half the time he's over 500. He has had this cat named Damian Lillard for 8 of those 9 seasons. Dame's pretty good. Overall career win percentage of 513. His win percentage in Portland is 555, so he's doing a little bit better than his average in Portland. The most awards of any sorts he's won. He's been coach of the month a couple times. Jamaal, hot tea, cold brew. The Blazers need to fire Terry Stotts.
It's hot tea to me, and honestly, it's a shame because I think Terry Stotts is one of the more ingenuitive offensive minds in the game. But as Jeremy said, like Portland has just been stale. Like even with the Western Conference appearance in 2019, when they beat my Nuggets in Game 7.
That was a good game, man. That was a good.
It was a good
series.
game, but I just think that Portland really needs to find a new direction, because it just seems to me like they've just been stuck in the mud. There's already been speculation about trades and whatnot. Is Damian Lillard going to stay? What are they going to do about CJ McCollum? I don't know how much longer Carmelo Anthony's going to be there. Like, Portland just needs to figure out a new direction, because those stats is good. They're just like, to me, that you can't expect to really win a lot of games when you don't even play above average defense like they've been struggling to do. Because I saw the other night that they just look lifeless on the defensive end.
I wonder what a new coach could do for just a years-long stretch of bad defense. I think it's got to be the personnel mostly, but you never know.
You never know. I think that you point out you brought up a good, like, sometimes this is just about changing whose eyes are on the team every day, right? Like, it's not necessarily that Terry Stotts isn't doing well, right? They're in the playoffs most years, over 500 more than half the time, right? Like, they got to Western Conference Finals, as Jamal pointed out. Although I'd argue, like, seeding helps them sometimes, right? This, like getting to play the Warriors, then they got swept. Like, if they play the Warriors around earlier, they probably also get swept, right? I think that it's worth pointing out that in all of their 500 seasons and in one of their not over 500 seasons, their offensive rating was at least a 109, and that's really good. So that's 109 points in 100 possessions, and that's scoring a lot of points, which speaks to what both of you said, is that they're winning games by scoring points. So I'd be interested to see if a new coach should come in and fix that by, like, saying, keep the offense, Dame times Dame time. Let's talk about rotations, right? Let's talk about coverages. Let's talk about how we're going to play the drop versus when we stay level on pick and rolls and those kind of things. I think what's interesting to me is and it's kind of one of the reasons I'm looking to see who the Rockets draft this year. I wonder if you can really be a good defensive team with two small guards, right? Like, Lillard and McCollum.
So hard.
Lillard and McCollum are both tremendous. They both need the ball a lot. They both need to start for that team. But truthfully, can you be a good lineup if you've got two guys in the backcourt that are 6'4"? They've been starting. I guess it's been Covington at the 4 right now. There's an undersized 4 as well. That puts a lot on Nurk down low. And when Nurk's been out with injuries, Cantor can't play defense down low. Like that really there's too many clips of Cantor being put on a turnstile where just the guards get him on the level on the pick and roll and it goes. And so I wonder if that's a personnel thing or a coach thing. But either way, it seems like this has kind of hit its peak and it's time to move on. I just hadn't thought about that till the Hayes piece today. One name that came up that I want to throw it to you, and I'm going to throw it to you first because you're in Minnesota. David Vanterpool is also in Minnesota, right? So Vanterpool is the assistant coach in Minnesota. He was the assistant coach for Saunders, right? And then when they went on to the Chris Finch thing where they got Finch off of the Raptors bench all in one night, it felt really sketchy. Dame Lillard spoke up on Twitter and said, how could you not hire a guy sitting in your front row? Because
he's right there.
Vanderpool had also been an assistant coach in Portland in Dame's earlier years, and Vanderpool has moved up the ranks and is currently in Minnesota in a much more, like I said, front chair of this bench. Do you think it's worth appeasing to Dame and going and getting his guy? I don't know anything about Vanderpool aside from that he's been an assistant several places.
Neither do I. I was actually going to bring it up. I'm glad I didn't cut you off because you got there anyway, but I was going to say, obviously, he's been in the building with Portland. Dame's not like got his eyes on other coaches out there all the time, but he's like, he knows who's a good coach. He knows who he likes, or at least would be good in the NBA. He knows his guys. So maybe he does have his eye on some other coaches. He just maybe help Dame out a little bit. Get one of his guys. I'm not really sure, but I'm glad you brought it up because he does maybe have a little wandering eye. He knows some good coaches out there.
Jamal, if we're going to have to split this into 3 pieces, if it's like a Dame piece, a CJ piece, a Stotts piece, and you only had to keep one, the piece you keep is Dame, right? Is it worth finding a guy that appeases Dame Lillard, Jamal, or are you going to like try and find somebody more like a Thibodeau, rough, tough, defensive, or like what are you thinking?
Well, I mean, that's tough. I mean, if you're gonna ask for Dame's opinion, I think he'll give it to you. But as we've seen across all other sports, just because a star player wants a certain coach or whatnot doesn't mean you're going to get your wish. But I will say Portland, I think they'll at least need to consider who Dame wants to bring in. But if all else fails, like Portland, eventually is going to have to blow this team up. So do not be surprised if either or both CJ McCollum or Nurkic, if they're both traded by the time the next season comes around. And yeah, I honestly don't know how much longer Terry Stotts could be there unless they somehow make the finals, which I do not see coming out the West.
Or right now they're down in that play-in we talked about. They're at the 7th seed as it currently stands. So I guess if you're projecting one of those teams drops, they could move up. They score a lot of points, and that's hard to stop. But you can lose 145 to 140.
Well, how about this? Speaking of, how about this? You're gonna like this one, Parker. Let's lean into this offense. Let's lean into offense, and we got an assistant coach who could maybe just be taking a year off of being a head coach. How about Mike D?
Let's
get Mike D in Portland.
I will say, if you saw what Mike D did with Nash, you saw what Mike D did with James. You're seeing what his influence with Nash as a coach is happening with, whether it's James or Kyrie, whoever's bringing the ball up. I would like to watch what he could do with Dame Lillard. It will not solve.
McCollum. Hey,
it will not solve the defensive problems.
First thing he does is trade Nurkic. We need a lob threat.
Oh yeah, Nurkic is not a lob.
Y'all just need somebody who can stop somebody, because look, especially in the West, when you got to deal with Gobert, you got to deal with Jokic, you got to deal with all these other big men in the West. You better have some stopper in the middle. If not, you gonna have problems.
I can tell you right now, just because I saw it for the last couple of years, the way that D'Antoni would stop those guys is by putting Covington and Carmelo at the floor at the same time and saying, we're going to shoot threes, you're going to shoot twos. and he's just going to roll those dice. It clearly didn't win a championship in Houston or Phoenix. I'm not saying it will. I'm saying that's the D'Antoni solution to that problem.
I love it.
And it hasn't worked to this point, so I don't know if it's going to work
now. It'll be interesting to see if it works. Anyway, Brooklyn will be a later topic. They're going to play for a long time from here on out. All right, jumping on the next hot tea cold brew segment. We're going to look at a guy you might have heard of named Steph Curry. So Steph Curry has had this crazy month. Mark Stein and the New York Times is writing about it all the time. It feels like, obviously, West Coast athletic people love him too. My question to you, Jamaal, I'll start with you, is hot tea or cold brew? Steph Curry is having his most impressive, key phrase, year.
I think he has been, because I mean, of course, we know for like those first couple of years when they had the title with the Warriors, he was the guy. But I think now it's more so because now he doesn't have Klay Thompson, he doesn't have Kevin Durant, and he has to literally carry this team on his shoulders. And for him to average 35 points at the age that he's at, it's one of the more impressive things I've ever seen. Now, how that'll work against an actual solid team who actually has a couple of days to a week to prepare for him, I think it'll be a different story, because I'm pretty sure that a Monty Williams or a Snyder from Utah, they're not going to let him just come on the floor and get 40 points a night. That's not going to happen. Like, you got to do something to get the ball out of his hands. But I think what most teams, what they need to start doing is that they have to meet him at either half court, or they need to send a trap to get a ball out of his hands, because as soon as he crosses half court, he's already in range.
Yeah. So, Jeremy, if I look at this, the year that compares to this is 2015-16, right? The 400 threes, the unanimous MVP, and we're going to break that down. We're going to continue with that, but that's the year that people, I think, would point to if they're not pointing to this one, right? And so, Jeremy, hot tea, cold brew, is this his most impressive year, or is it something else?
It's cold brew for me. I'm finally going cold side here. Guys, it's only been 5 years. Do you remember 2016? Do you remember 2016? He had April this year. 2016 was the whole season. I could not believe what I was watching every time he touched a basketball in that season. How many points did he score that season? He led the league in scoring. He's doing it again this year, or at least he's jockeying with Brad Beal. You need one game. Just watch the OKC game. He hasn't made a game winner from nearly half court this season. They won 73 games. Obviously, Draymond was better. They had Klay. Didn't have Kevin Durant. I just don't want to say it's his most impressive just because of some of the scrubs that they're playing with out there. Like, that just kind of proves to me that he can do it no matter who he's playing with. I don't think it makes it really more impressive. He's still doing the same things. 2016 was magical. It was the most insane offensive season we have ever seen. I heard somebody describe Jokic's season this year, his MVP type season this year, as a transcendent offensive season. You could say that. It's been really good, but let's not use the word transcendent. That's what we call 2016 Stephen Curry.
I think the Jokic transcendence piece will come if 5 years from now you've got a bunch of big men trying to do what he does, right? Like, I feel like the deal with Steph Curry was we could tell that, this is where the game's going. You're going to have guys dribbling to pull up threes from 5 feet behind the line because you're not playing deep. Hand down, man down starts from the midcourt, like Jamaal said. I thought it was interesting as I compared the years here. He has a little, just like a little over a point more per game this year. He's actually playing slightly less minutes per game, although it was quickly pointed out to me by a colleague that that's probably because they were really pushing for 73 wins, right? Like that was an important thing to that Warriors team. Mm-hmm. Whereas now when they're getting blown out, it's like, why, right? He has, I thought this was interesting. It's almost identical. They're just not going to play as many games. He had 307 made three-pointers through 58 games, as in last night because they play again tonight, or as in Monday night because they play tonight. He had 307 made threes in 58 games this season. He had 402 made threes in 79 games. Both of those are within a tenth of a three per game with one another, right? And so, like, it's not as many games. He won't get to 400 unless something crazy happens. And the 5 or 6 weeks that Jeremy brought up really shifts that number, right? Because before that, it was much more of a, I say pedestrian, like it's not Steph Curry, but it was not like he is having 8, 9, 9, 8, like boom, 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 boom. And so that really upped the ante on the average there. I think the biggest difference here is like we want to give him like this superhero cape, like take the Superman thing because we see what's around him. Whereas like in 73-9 Warriors, the night that Steph had 24, Clay went for 60, right? Like whatever year that was whatever game that was, that he had 60 points in 3 quarters and dribbled the ball 11 times. Like there's none of that happening this year because Klay Thompson decided the boot on, right?
I will say another thing that may contradict my initial statement a little bit. What if you want to look at a separator, I suppose, from 2016 to the 2021 season here that makes it maybe more impressive? I might start to lean after I say this towards the 2021 season because 2016 was, hey guys, this is where basketball is going. We're light years ahead of you. We have the guy that's pushing the game forward. Now everybody kind of shoots threes. Everybody has their guy that takes a bunch of them. You have your James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, Dame Lillard. Everybody's a little bit of a copycat, and Steph is still the king. You want somebody to be the three-point god. It is still Steph Curry. And he's proving it once again. So I'm kind of walking it back a little bit. Maybe this could be the separator is that, hey, you're all still doing it. I'm still better than you at it.
In 2016, he's the unanimous MVP, the first ever unanimous MVP, and I had beef with that. You go back to my Twitter sphere a while back, but it was more with the word unanimous. It was not that he was not the MVP. I have a lot more issue with his 2015 MVP than his 2016 one. 2016 he wins unanimous MVP. He's getting some like Twitter sphere buzz for MVP online. Statistically, again, it's a very similar season, Jamaal. So why isn't it unanimous this year? Is it really just come down to wins and losses for an individual award?
I think for the most part you have to consider that because as you look at the MVP race right now, look at all the names that are on there. You got Jokic, you got Julius Randle, who I think has put his name up there right now. I think you can still put Giannis in there and Embiid as well. So it's like Steph Curry, like he actually has good competition. And the difference that you're seeing now is that it's close to the return of the big man. And I never thought I'd say that after so many years, because as I stated at really the start of the 2010 decade, it was all about guard play. Whoever had the better guards would probably win the championship. But now that you're seeing Jokic, that you're seeing Embiid, and I would throw Giannis in there as well, that maybe now some of these other teams, if you have a freakish athletic big man like that, I think it can change the narrative a little bit. Well,
and Steph Curry's former teammate Kevin Durant was, I guess, a perimeter guy, but He's not a little guy, right? Like there's
small,
some
man.
in between there. And I think what's fascinating about those Warriors teams with Durant and Draymond was they would seamlessly go from Draymond and Durant being a 6'8" and a 7-footer defensively to being all perimeter guys offensively because Draymond could run point, right?
Yeah.
Jeremy, does it really come down to the wins and losses? Is that the big difference here? Or is there something I'm missing?
No, I think I think not missing, but I don't think it's just the wins and losses. I think it's kind of like what I just said with how we define both the seasons. We're all NBA fans here. We understand what wins the MVP award. It's what defined the season. Steph Curry making 1 million 3-pointers in March or in April and scoring 30 points. That doesn't really define the season. He was the only one doing this type of thing in 2016. We had never seen anything that he did in 2016 before. That was, guys, he is torching the league and tearing it apart by doing this crazy thing that nobody is capable of doing. He is clearly the most valuable player in the year of 2016's NBA. As the game transcends, as it moves forward, as more people start to do the things he does, even if he's still the best at it, it's not what we define as the defining characteristic of the 2021 NBA season. I'm not going to say most valuable because I think we all know that's not what the MVP is. I kind of wish I wish every league would use their MVP award and do it the same way as college football does the Heisman. The most outstanding player of the 2021 season. It's just like, why aren't we doing that? It's more fun. It's less technical. We don't have to fight over the definition as much. It's just who defined the season? Who was the best player this season?
Well, and I wrote a piece, this was a long time ago now, in 2019 when Giannis and Harden were going back and forth. And like the argument for Giannis was this idea of a two-way player, right? But I seem to feel like we have a Defensive Player of the Year award. We don't really have any, like, MVP is kind of the Offensive Player of the Year. And I know that
in a way,
more goes into value than offense. But there's no other way to reward the most outstanding offensive season. In 2016, that was 400 threes because the most threes in a season at that point, not by a Splash Brother, was 263. He beat it by 140 shots. Like, and that was Ray Allen. Like, Ray Allen's still one of the best shooters I've ever seen play, right? Like,
there's the scoring title, but like, what's really that? Like,
right? Like, no
scored
one.
a lot.
It's not
there's
the same.
More to offense than just scoring.
Doesn't carry the same weight as defensive player. And so, like, my thought when 2019 and the thing I wrote way back in the day was that, like, yeah, Giannis is Defensive Player of the Year and should get MVP votes. But Harden scored 35 games. And the same way, right, that Steph Curry hit 400 threes that season, right? Like 400 threes, 400 threes. Like, anyway, I think it's fascinating. If you went to value and did not take in wins, you'd almost always find some good dude on a bad team, right? Like that would be a very different award. We do need to keep it moving though. So our next hot tea cold brew segment, hot tea, cold brew. I think I'm going to throw this to Jamaal because I know Jamaal loves talking about a couple of these teams. Hot tea, cold brew, Jamaal. The top 4 seeds in each conference are set.
Man, I want to say hot, but I'm kind of teetering because look, this next week or two for the regular season is really going to define a lot. That's why I said early in the show that tiebreakers were going to play a huge part in this. And if you look at Phoenix, who's the top seed right now in the West, they own the tiebreaker against Utah, but they lost it against the Clippers and lost against Denver as well. So these things will come into play as we go into these final weeks. As you look at Philadelphia, they did their due diligence by getting that tiebreaker over Brooklyn, but then lost to Milwaukee. So it's really going to come down to who's really going to care about these next couple of games coming down the stretch, because some teams are going to opt for rest, other teams are going to opt to stay in rhythm, and it's just what coaches, what do they value more? So do I think the top 4 seeds are set in stone? No, I've seen crazier things happen, so it's not a done deal just yet.
Talk to me, Jeremy. Hot tea, cold brew are the top 4 seeds, and Jamaal pretty well listed them just now. Are they set, or is there going to be some real movement in the next 10 days?
Are you talking quick clarification here? Are we talking positioning or just the top 4 no matter what order?
Well, I guess it's open interpretation. I think Jamaal was talking about positioning, but I don't think he necessarily – do you see them changing, Jamaal?
Yeah, I mean, it could change, but like I said, it depends on which teams win which tiebreakers. That will come into play.
Well, I'm looking at the East specifically here. Well, the Knicks are currently getting waxed by the Nuggets. That might continue throughout the night. And it pains my soul to say it because they've just been a thorn in my side all year. The Atlanta Hawks, like, they could jump the Knicks. They're playing really well, and I don't particularly like it. I don't think the Celtics are going to move very much. I still think they're just like a win one really good game, lose two bad ones. That's going to stay pretty similar. You've got your top three in the East. I think the East is going to stay the same. Philadelphia is clearly going for that one seed, and they're good enough to do it. Brooklyn is still kind of just, hey, we're going to win the games we should. We're going to play really hard, but we're still waiting for all our guys to get back. That's what matters to us. Top three in the East are set. That's what I think. I think top three in the East are totally set. West, position-wise, you could have some jockeying going on. Phoenix and Utah both have 47 wins. Same record exactly, actually. And Phoenix is losing to Atlanta. Atlanta, stop doing this to me. I hate watching Trae Young play basketball. I can't stop.
Oh, we got to hear more on that later. I got to hear more on why we hate watching Trae Young play basketball later.
We'll get there. But then, like, the Clippers, Denver, like, Utah could get Donovan Mitchell back. We got 7 games left, about 7 left for each team. Top 4, I think, is set team-wise. I don't think that's changing. I think just positioning, we're going to be jockeying for position a little bit. I do love watching teams or predicting teams to purposely lose games to get a better matchup. That's like my favorite thing to watch in any sport.
It happens every single year.
Any sport, football.
I remember in 2019, the Nuggets did it, and it really screwed Houston over. I believe it was the Nuggets. They sat their starters to basically not have to play Golden State in the second round.
My God,
and it's the season that Jamaal actually alluded to. They played a great 7-game series with Portland. They lost the second round to Portland, but it was a great 7-game series. They really had a chance, right? The only real team I see falling out of any top 4 is the Knicks because, like Jeremy's favorite Atlanta Hawks, and they would just be flipping 4-5, really, right?
Pretty much.
I do think you're about to see that jockeying, jostling, whatever you want to call it, where, does Brooklyn say, screw this, we just got to rest, get over the playoffs, we're going to sit Durant too? Does Philly keep playing because they like winning the regular season is a big thing for them?
I think they do. Putting it out there.
Does Utah value getting that 1 seed and not having to play the Enfuego Steph Curry, right? Or whatever happens, right? Because you got to realize that getting that 1 or 2 seed, you just had to deal with whatever happens in the play-in games. Or is it worth it to fall to the 3 and get a known matchup? Like those kind of things could all happen in a weird year. But I don't think any of those 4 teams on either side, with the exception of the Knicks, I don't think the other 7 really fall out of the top 4. Like the Clippers aren't going to go on the road in the first round of the playoffs, right? Like that doesn't seem realistic.
Well, I think another big factor that'll play for this year's playoffs is that home court advantage. Although it's limited because of not so many fans, I think it will play key come down the stretch. And teams like Phoenix and Utah, those are, I think, the teams that will really need the home court more than, say, the Lakers or the Clippers, for that matter.
A team that maybe doesn't need home court, but is definitely going to go for home court is the Knicks. They're doing that. Man, they're fighting for that.
They got to let, and I hope the vaccine's in the right ways and the people are getting whatever, taking care of themselves in New York, and the numbers are where I haven't looked at the New York COVID numbers. If they get a home court playoff series, they got to let fans in Madison Square Garden, right? Like they can space them out, test them, whatever you got to do. But like they got to let fans in Madison Square Garden figure it out.
At least by the second round, because as I told you guys, if it's 4-5, the Knicks are winning a playoff series. And
then if in the second round it's Knicks Nets, they got to let them in both. You got to let them in both.
If that happens, all pressure goes to the Nets.
Oh my God, please.
No, it's exactly right, Jamaal. The Knicks are playing the house money at that point. All right, we're going to move on to the next hot tea cold brew topic. We're going to look at Russ Westbrook. We're moving on to the next segment on Russ Westbrook. We're going to talk about open containers. So once you pop the top off of your Yeti, mine's got cold stuff in it tonight. But once you pop the top off your Yeti, anything can go in or out. That's hot tea, that's cold brew, that's ice, that's water, that's whatever you want, anything. Our open container question, and I'll start with Jeremy because I think I went Jamaal twice in a row on accident, is What do you make of another Russell Westbrook triple-double year? It's his 4th time in 5 years. Open container, take the floor, Jeremy.
I just don't think I can hate on Russell Westbrook anymore. I just kind of have for the longest time. It all started in 2011 when people said he was better than Derrick Rose, and he just wasn't. I had to tell everybody that he wasn't, and then he kept being athletic and fast and explosive, and my favorite player was not.
He just decided to keep doing that. It was a great decision.
Yeah, he just,
a great base though.
if I were Derrick Rose, I would have just keep being athletic and explosive. That's just me.
Poor life choice.
But that is 2 of the things that I actually read this week and liked. Your Russell Westbrook piece and another one that I'll get to in Wednesday Night Rights if we decide to do it. Just about Russell Westbrook and how we know what you are, man. We know what you are. Everywhere you go, you do this thing where you are able to play 110 miles an hour every single night. Not everybody can do that. We see the stats. We also watch the game. We know what some of those stats mean. There are also stats to explain your stats. 34 points in 31 shots, or 14 assists and 7 turnovers. And then it's the boneheaded plays maybe at the end of a game that make you say, well, that's just empty calorie stats. He doesn't really actually help you win. It's at a point you just stop it. I'm just going to stop hating on the guy a little bit because he's just impressive and fun to watch. Really good player. But we know what Russell Westbrook is. We know exactly what he is. He's a great player, but when we get to big moments in either big games, playoffs, what have you, this is how you you separate the best players. We know he's of the elite, but how do you separate them? They can put up stats, but in the end of games or just in any big games in general, he's going to make these dumb plays, or he can't do certain things like shoot threes or decide that he shouldn't just go 1,000 miles an hour and take this layup and miss it when he really shouldn't. He's an enigma. I don't have a whole lot on him except for some ramblings that I can't coherently put together. He's just nuts. I can't contextualize Russell Westbrook.
Jamaal, do you have any context? Open container. What do you got on Russell Westbrook in the triple doubles? Again, 4th time in 5 years he's going to average a triple double on the season.
I want all ladies and gentlemen to pay attention to what I'm about to say. We will never, ever see another player like Russell Westbrook ever again. Because the numbers that he puts up, yes, I get it. Sometimes it may be empty stats, and sometimes the boneheaded plays that you see at the end of games. Okay, I get that. But at the same time, I want a player who's going to give me effort, who's going to give me hustle, who's going to give me all that stuff. Because especially in today's NBA, you don't see that every day. You don't. In 90s, that was a given. Like, especially back then, if you didn't give that hustle, you were not playing at all. You do that mess with Pat Riley, you will never see the floor again. So my thing, Westbrook, is his legacy is kind of jumbled because he played with great players almost throughout his whole career. Because if you think about it, Kevin Durant, James Harden, Paul George and Oladipo and all those guys. He's played with all great players, but yet, yeah, he doesn't have the ring to show for it. But look, there's a lot of great players in this game throughout history who does not have a ring because of certain circumstances or whatnot. So he just happens to be in that category.
He has a place in history, that's for sure. He has a defined, concrete place in history. It's just not where your top 20 all-timers maybe have.
Mm-hmm. And so I will say that for Westbrook, I think he can maybe not change it wholly, but I think in this upcoming playoff, should Washington make it and actually get into the first round and maybe make the 1st or 2 seed actually really work to get that series win, I think it may change his narrative a little bit. Because let's be real, did we really expect Washington to really do anything this year?
Nope, because they're a 7 or 8 seed. Those don't have historically good possibilities.
Well, and they're currently at 10. I mean, the play-in, they could get in, right? They're currently at 10. I think it's all fascinating. So I wrote a little bit about it, comparing it to Wilt Chamberlain, right? Because the truth is like, what, maybe you guys have kids. Whenever we are talking to grandkids one day, you'll be telling your grandkids about watching this happen, because his name is going to be littered throughout a history book, right? Like these he has more triple doubles than Kobe Bryant had double doubles, right? Like these things are just don't seem real, right? They just don't seem real in the same way that like Wilt Chamberlain getting 55 boards in a game doesn't seem real, right? Like you just can't fathom it. 100 points in a game, how did it happen? 50 points average over a season, how does that happen, right? I think this interesting thing with this triple double is like, it's a way to talk about dominating all aspects of a game that it's like concrete and we can compare it. Like assist, getting teammates involved, points, you're scoring, rebounds. We associate that with defense because it ends the other team's possession, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like a very raw stat about it, but like it's got a great ring to it. And I think I heard Pablo Torre mention it's got great marketing, like triple double. Like that's a thing you can quickly say and get to.
Yep.
But realistically, like is a 9 point, 12 assist, and 8 rebound night worse than a 10-10-10? Like it seems relatively arbitrary, right? Like 10 is this like weird number. He's just really good at it. And I think that the piece I wrote about comparing him to Wilt is Wilt gets 2 rings, right? He gets a ring in Philly and gets a ring in LA.
My favorite part.
He gets 2 rings. In those 2 seasons, he doesn't get 50 points a game. He doesn't get, and one of them, he only gets 14 points a game, right? Like he takes a step back because he's on this great team. That's never happened for Russ, all right? Like this triple-double run, like it's all these stats, crazy. He's never been on the team with Gail Goodrich and Jerry West and those guys, right? That just hasn't happened. And I don't know if...
Gentlemen, those are legendary names.
And I don't know that it does happen, right? Like at this point, so he's played with Durant, played with George, played with Harden, and now with Beal. I don't know if it ever does happen, which is it's kind of a shame. Like, does he get a chance? Because, again, he's done 4 of the last 5 years, he did a triple-double. The year he didn't, he's in Houston with Harden. He catches COVID in the summer, tears his quad in the bubble, and, like, I'm going to just say it, a lot of Houston Twitter pulls up the airballed free throw line jumper he has in Game 5 of the Lakers series, basically ice the cake, right? Like just pulls up off the dribble, free throw line, airball, and it's like, oh man.
I guess here's the question I'll ask you is like if it ever happens for Russ, like you said with Wilt, what did Wilt have in those 2 championships? He did win. He really found a role and took a step back. Do you know Russell Westbrook? Do you think he would do a thing like that? Like, does he feel like a guy who would get a chance at some historical glory, getting himself on a championship team and sort of taking this backseat role, if you want to even call it a backseat, but just, it's like, hey, Russ, you have to like tone it down for 12 minutes a game. He's like, no.
He knows one thing, right? I think, and I'm going to throw it to Jamaal too. I think what's interesting is I think he made that decision when he asked Houston to find a way to get him to Washington, and it worked out really great, right? He and John Wall's contract worked out great, but he wanted to go back to Scott Brooks, right? Like like there's a ceiling there, and it's frankly it's 10th seed in the East, right? Like Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal, and like there's something wrong there, right? Right, Jamaal? Like there is a ceiling on playing like this.
There is, but I just think with Westbrook's, with his personality and his innate drive to be the best, I think that's preventing him from doing so. So I honestly, I want to say that there has to be a stop at some point, but with him, I just don't know, because that's another guy who's in a Kobe mode or whatnot. Because you have other guys in the league like a Devin Booker and some of these other guys who came from Kobe Bryant's mold. Like you give 110% almost every night. I don't know if Westbrook can actually stop on a given night to do that.
He clearly didn't like having to stop in his year in Houston. He was the first name to come out as far as wanting out of the squad, right? Not that he was the only one by any stretch, but he was the first one I remember reading about. All right, we're going to move on to our long 2. So this is based on the idea that, so this is midweek mid-range, and a mid-range jump shot is a long 2-pointer. Analytics nerds hate it. It's what we do here. And so my long 2-pointer to you guys is asking each of y'all to give me 2 awards that you can confidently name now. So 2 of your end of season awards that you feel like I know who's got this award 10 days before the season ends. I'll let either one of you guys want to start. I shouldn't pick here.
Let Jeremy go.
Jeremy, do you have 2 awards that you'd be like, I know who's getting those 2?
I'm going to steal one from Jamaal because I feel like it's his guy, his team. The MVP is locked. He has not missed a game all season, and it is the season of
knock on wood,
durability.
Jamaal, knock on wood there.
Yes. The transcendent offensive season and the durability. He hasn't missed a game. I can't believe he hasn't missed a game. The guy who looks red in the face after every single half.
He's not known for being in great shape either. Like, that's not his.
He may not be in great shape. He's just not hurt.
And so, you want to go one at a time, or Jamaal, are you gonna rebut that, or what are you gonna say?
No, I have to go with him. And as soon as I see a notification, Jokic drops 24 points in the first quarter against the Knicks. So, come on, what else do you want the man
Julius
to do?
Randle, who?
See, don't do that to Julius Randle. Don't do
I
that.
know, I like him.
But
as long as he's balling out for the Knicks and not the Lakers, it's perfect. It's just icing on the cake.
Yeah, you're right about that. So I will say that for all Jokic has done, I think the transformations he made, as a matter of fact, dating back to 2019, do y'all remember the 4 overtime game they had against Portland in Game 3?
Yes. Yeah. And
he was exhausted. I don't know how they came back the next game, and even matter of fact, Denver won that game. I don't know how.
I thought he was going to die on the court that night.
I did too. I'm sitting here watching with my wife or whatnot. Like, this man was going to pass out. But I think after that game and going into the very next season, he made a commitment to get in better shape, to stay in the game longer. And plus, I think it's harder for him because he plays in altitude where, as we know, if you are not careful, altitude will crush you.
That's an impressive dedication to him, because if I played a 4 overtime game, I'd be like, isn't everybody tired? It can't be just me.
So yes, I personally believe it has to be Jokic until either Embiid or Chris Paul just has a crazy 7-game stretch or whatever. It's Jokic to lose.
Yeah, I mean, if Embiid lights the world on fire and takes over the 1 seed, and it's just like, that's the only way, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys are locking up Jokic. Jeremy, do you have another guy you're going to lock up for an award?
I do have another one. I do. I guess I have 2, but I'll take. Ooh, which one do I want to use? They're both not super sexy awards, but
I have 2 that are not MVP, so that's why I'm holding back a little bit. I want to hear what you got to say.
I will take Julius Randle for most improved. I just feel like that's a lock.
Okay.
Like, who else? Who else? Come on, the Knicks. He's going to get the Knicks narrative bump too, and it's justified.
And someone's got to get an award in the city of New York. No one on the Nets has played enough games to get an MVP votes. They're not going to give Nash coach. They're not going to give him coach of the year, right? It seems like he's just rolling the ball out in a lot of ways, not playing very good defense. And that's about the only award you can hand to the Knicks. No one's defensive player of the year. I don't think Tibbs is a coach of the year guy, right? If they're going to be in the 4 seed.
Oh my God, I want him to be coach of the year. That's the one that I don't think is a lock, but come on, dude.
I mean, maybe that's the award. I feel like the Knicks get some award, and Julius as most improved, right? Being a role player on his own team a year ago to being an all-star on the 4 seed this year.
Maybe
in the
even
city of
All-NBA.
New York.
Yeah.
That was one of my 2. Sorry, so that I had to jump in there.
Good.
I think it's got it's the only way to get New York an award, and I feel like you got to award New York.
2 other people who are up for the most improved award?
Oh,
I would put I put MPJ in there.
No,
I was just going to say MPJ. That's one.
If there's no big jump like a Julius that goes from not an all-star to an all-star, they typically do give it to some young guy that went, had a really good jump from his 2nd to 3rd year or 1st, 2nd year, whatever. I just feel like it's a chance to give New York an award, and it might be the only chance.
Very deserved, too. Very deserved.
No, and frankly, so is MPJ. So, I mean, there are lots of guys that got better, right? Lots of guys that got better. And the truth is like there's a weird way to give this award to do you give it to Steph Curry for like how much he took on? Like you could almost reframe how you hand out the award.
I feel like
right?
once you've won Most Improved and MVP in the same year, you're exempt from winning Most Improved.
Well, and I think the deal is just like though talking about growing into a new role, right?
Yeah,
and there's a weird way to reframe how we hand it out, but I think as a way we give it out right now, it's Julius. Jamaal, do you have a lock of another award that we haven't said?
Yes, and I have been on this for the past couple of months, and I will still maintain it now. Monty Williams of the Phoenix Suns, Coach of the Year, with the job he's done with Phoenix. Because as we know, like they had that stretch in the bubble, they were 8-0, and they were beating good teams. They weren't beating no slouches now. And now to see them come right back this year and say, "Oh, what y'all did in the bubble, that was a fluke," and now look at them, they're this close to getting the top seed in the West. He's Coach of the Year.
So the only reason I wouldn't see Coach of the Year is if they gave it someone the 1 seed, right? Like that, like Monty Williams and Phoenix have been great. If they don't get the 1 seed, they might give it someone who did, right? But it feels like if Phoenix gets the 1 seed, that has to be a lock, right?
I remember specifically when Jamaal was talking about this last on the midweek mid-range because I jumped in on the comments and said, "Can we just give it to Chris Paul? Can Chris Paul win Coach of the
Year?" And we got Peanut saying, "What up? What up, Peanut?" Good to see you, Peanut. I don't know if you can hand it to Chris Paul. Does Chris Paul hurt Monty Williams' chances?
Maybe he might. No. I think that Chris Paul is just like executive of the year for Christ's sake. He's just he is the hands-on executive.
You don't do that to James Jones. Don't you do that?
Well, I must say, or like you do the same with LeBron James year. He got Anthony Davis, right?
Yeah.
So none of y'all said my other one, and I don't know if that means I'm right or wrong. Sixth man of the year has to be Jordan Clarkson, right?
That was my other one. That was the one I was cheering on.
Is anyone even competing for that besides Jordan Clarkson?
No.
If you look back at like who wins the award, it's typically guy off the bench with the most points. Clarkson has the second most points per game on the Jazz.
It's sixth man who everybody knows is like a sixth man. Not every team has a defined sixth man. They're messing up with their rotations all the time. Like if you are the sixth man for a really good team, people know about it. That's how you define that.
For all those years.
The only other argument I could think of, and we talked about the Blazers a little bit in a negative light tonight, though. Carmelo Anthony has started less than double-digit games. Would be an interesting thing, and frankly, like to his credit, he's accepted this different role in Portland that he was hesitant to do in Oklahoma City and Houston. And he's really shined a lot. Obviously, it would be a way to commemorate this year that he's like climbed into the top 10 of scoring and those kind of things, right? But he's the only other guy I can think of off the top of my head.
The only reason I was cut you off, but the only reason I wouldn't give it to him is because Mel doesn't want Sixth Man of the Year award. No way he wants that.
Also fair. There you go. We got someone on the right account. Best sports. So best. Yeah, you found the right account. Thanks. Hey. Way to find us. Jamaal, am I way off base here, or is Jordan Clarkson going to win Sixth Man of the Year running away? It's going to be unanimous.
Do you know anybody else who's been a better sixth man than him? I can't name anybody. So.
I thought he had a submission. Yeah,
I thought you were going to say somebody. I can't think of one that scored more points. I guess you go like a defensive sixth man or something. But it's Clarkson to me pretty much running away. We are going to jump quickly into Wednesday Night Rights. If you've been watching the show before, Wednesday Night Rights is a chance to just talk about things you're either reading or writing or whatever you've been up to as far as catching up on hoops. While you guys are thinking, I got a quick list of rundown stuff. So I want to shout out, I got my Oxy hat on. Shout out fellow alumnus, Mirren Fader for her Jay Sean Tate article a couple weeks ago. And she also wrote a thing for the NFL draft about Rashad Bateman. Really, really great writer. She does a great job of diving into like the players' stories, and there's like always stats sprinkled in. It's way more about the in-depth stories for them on the Ringer. John Hollinger of The Athletic talking about how people being pissed about the play-in is exactly why it's working, and it's a really funny thing on The Athletic talking about like if Mark Cuban and LeBron James don't want to be in it, and teams are like excited to be in it on the other side, like that's a sign that it's working. Sportingnews.com, speaking of Oxy, the thing on a quarterback at my alma mater as well about how he ought to be in the NFL, which is a big deal for D3 football. And then stuff I wrote this week, I wrote a big deal on Russell Westbrook, as Jeremy alluded to, about the triple-double and talking about Wilt Chamberlain with it as well. And then I wrote about LeBron James in video game chair. No one's talking about why was that such a tweet that only I found really interesting over the weekend? LeBron James in the market for a video game chair? What why are you asking? You can buy the whole store. Try them out. Like, what are you asking for? Jamaal, are you writing anything, reading anything? What have you been checking up on?
So I actually been reading up on the continued resilience of the Denver Nuggets after they've lost Jamal Murray after his ACL tear, and they went on won 9 of their last 10 games before that loss to the Lakers on the other night, and now they're beating up on the Knicks now. It's just amazing to me how this team, they just continue to come back after all the adversity, all the injuries. They're still playing, and it just goes to show that you keep playing until you're either eliminated or you don't make the playoffs. So I think Mike Malone really deserves a lot of credit for what he's done for this team.
Fair enough. Jeremy, what you writing? What you reading?
Well, as I mentioned, play-in tournament is hot in the streets. My favorite thing I wrote recently was my favorite play-in, most entertaining play-in matchups. I'll spoil one of them. It is Hornets versus Celtics, because the parallels of the Hornets beating the Celtics would just be perfect. Be very icy. It'd be so funny.
And the parallel because of Gordon Hayward going from Boston to Charlotte.
Terry Rozier.
There's fun stuff there.
Kemba Walker on the Celtics. Just a lot of it. A lot of good stuff. And then I mentioned or alluded to earlier with the Russell Westbrook thing. I liked yours. I really liked the historical contextualization with him and Wilt. It was good take. Very good angle. And
Thanks.
Then another one. Yeah. It was
That's a little awkward, but thank you.
And then somebody wrote on Russell Westbrook, a little lesser known. I don't even know how I found him. He writes for Real GM on the occasion, Basketball Real GM, named Colin McGowan, if anybody's ever heard of him. Very small Twitter follow. Very sad guy sometimes. It's kind of strange. Very poetic.
Well, shout out to Colin. No, this is good.
The part I highlighted here was a paragraph, or the end of a paragraph. He goes, "The thing is, Russ is a great player, if not with a capital G or in dark ink. He has the capacity to be great. You just can't count on it, and you can't describe it with stats. It's a phenomenon. Intensity, purpose, dumb luck. The lightning bolt finds a tree, splits the ancient oak in half. Whoa." And then you check in on Russ a little while later, and he looks like he's pressing. He looks terrible. It's how he is. Never any one thing for very long. He's just the craziest thing. I can't wrap my head around Russell Westbrook. And I thought it was a fun thing to read.
Well, shout out to Colin. Don't be so sad. You're apparently if that's what the whole article is like, I got to go look this up now. It's very good writing.
Yeah.
All right. Our last segment, as always, here is the buzzer beater. So in the buzzer beater, each person gets 24 seconds to get out a take, thought, or some sort of insight. I have the timer. Do either of y'all want to go first?
Jamaal, I'm pushing it to Jamaal. I don't have anything yet. Maybe I can shot clock think of one.
Do that.
All right, so I'm gonna click go and then hold my timer to the screen so you can see it. All right, Jamaal, you're ready. Right. You're ready to go off the top. You're very good at these, and I don't mean to set up too much pressure, but you're usually right on time.
Yeah, let's do this.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right, with the playoffs about a couple of weeks away, I want to bring up a good point. There have only been 3 8 seeds since the playoffs moved to a 7-game format in the first round that have won in the first round. The 2007 Warriors, the 2011 Memphis Grizzlies, and the 2012 Philadelphia 76ers. So just because they're an 8 seed does not mean you can take them lightly. So beware, first seeds. You're going to have your hands full this year.
And he comes in under the buzzer again.
Nice.
Jamaal is very good at this. Also, there potentially, if the Lakers would have fallen to it, there could be some very good 8 seeds. So I think that there's a tie in there. Jeremy, do you have anything off the top?
Off the top, I don't want to be inauthentic to the people. I don't have a take this week.
All right, mine is really for 10 days from now, but it's all I've got. So that's what I'm going to go with. All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, so it is currently May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. In 9 days, May 14th, the WNBA season kicks off. So when the regular NBA season ends, look, there's summer basketball. You have Chicago Sky and CP3. You've got Seattle going for a repeat. You got Ionescu who's back for New York. You got the young Dallas team. And Asia Wilson is hitting threes now. It is a crazy fun league. Go get League Pass for WNBA. League Pass is just $17. $17 League Pass. All right. I'm going to take this down so you guys can see who our people are. Again, WNBA League Pass, $17. It supports the league. It shows people are invested. And again, it's a fun summer basketball league.
I bought it 2 years ago. It was worth it. Got the Sky.
You get every game in the league for $17.
That's sweet.
Yeah, that's it now.
All right. Obviously, you can find these guys at Twitter handles online. But Jeremy, tell people where to find you and those kinds of things.
Mostly just on Twitter. It's where I vent and voice my bad, just angry Chicago nonsense. And it's just, as you see here, it's just an @ in front of it. Last name is a little tough. You're just going to have to write it down. It's @JMacatelli23. Hoping to write a few more things when the playoffs come around because I do really love playoff basketball. It's just one of my favorite things in the entire world. So hopefully I'll get some playoff basketball stuff out there.
Fair enough. Jamaal, where can people find you?
So the Twitter handle's on the screen, y'all. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram as well. Just normal spots where to find me. Still trying to build up all the profiles, but I'm hoping that, especially when playoff time comes around, we'll start to get better footing. But you know where to find me.
Again, my name is Parker. You can find me at Ainsworth 512. That's at PAINSWRTH 512, all one word. This has been the Midweek Midrange. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Midweek Midrange. Be sure to like, subscribe, do all those good things to help out the show. And as always, I'm going to say thank you guys for pulling up. Thanks.